They handed me a badge at Christmas dinner. It said housekeeper in block letters, the cheap plastic kind you'd clip to a uniform at a hotel or a hospital. My daughter-in-law, Lauren, clipped it onto my sweater herself, right there in front of 20 people, her smile bright as the chandelier overhead. Her manicured fingers, French tips I'd paid for those nails at her salon last month, lingered on my shoulder just long enough to make sure everyone was watching. "Just so the caterers don't get confused," she announced cheerfully, her voice carrying across the vaulted ceiling of the dining room. "We don't want anyone mixing up the family with the help." The room erupted in laughter. Lauren's parents, Richard and Patricia Mitchell, owners of Mitchell Auto Group across 3 counties, threw their heads back like she'd told the joke of the century. Her younger sister giggled into her wine glass. Even some of the children laughed, too young to understand, but old enough to know when the adults thought something was funny. I stood there holding a tray of crystal glasses, each one filled with sparkling cider I'd poured myself in the kitchen while they'd gathered for pre-dinner cocktails. The badge hung heavy against my chest. Around me, the house I'd bought my house with my money, my name on the deed, gleamed with Lauren's expensive taste. White and gold everywhere. Professional decorations. A 7-foot tree covered in matching ornaments that had never seen a child's hands. I looked at my son. Brandon sat near the head of the table I'd selected paid for had delivered to this address. He glanced at the badge. He glanced at the tray in my hands. He glanced at the long table set with crystal and silver that caught the light just so. And then he smirked. Not smiled. Smirked. "Mom, don't make that face," he said, reaching past me for the carving knife. "Food's for family. You know that." Food's for family. I looked at my husband Robert sitting beside Richard Mitchell across the table. He adjusted his tie, looked down at his plate, said absolutely nothing. I counted the place settings. 10 on the main table. I counted the chairs. 9. There was no chair for me. The seating chart by the entryway, cream cardstock, elegant calligraphy. Another detail I'd paid Lauren's friend to create had my name on it. Under a section labeled Support Staff. My name is Samantha Hayes. I'm 68 years old. And that was the moment I realized the people I'd spent 43 years building a life for had decided I didn't deserve a seat at the table anymore. Let me tell you what happened next. But first, let me tell you how we got here. 1985, Fort Worth, Texas. I wasn't always invisible. There was a time when I painted my own sign standing on a stepladder in the July heat, while 8 months pregnant, carefully lettering each word, Hayes Hardware. The paint was cheap, we couldn't afford the good stuff yet, and it ran a little on the second A, but I didn't care. It was ours. Robert stood below, one hand shading his eyes from the sun, the other resting on the ladder. "Little to the left," he'd say, "then no back right." We argued about that sign for 20 minutes, laughing even though we were both sunburned and exhausted, and terrified we were about to lose everything we'd scraped together. We were 28 and 30 years old. We had $8,000 in savings, a mortgage on a building with uneven floors and a roof that leaked in the back room, and a baby coming in 6 weeks. We had no business opening a hardware store. Everyone told us that. But we did it anyway. The first year I worked the register with Brandon, strapped to my chest in one of those fabric carriers. He'd sleep through the sound of the bell above the door, through contractors arguing about lumber prices, through the screech of the saw in the back. When he woke up hungry, I'd nurse him in the office, really just a closet with a desk and a filing cabinet, and Robert would handle the front. We took turns eating. One of us would grab a sandwich from the diner next door while the other watched the store. We couldn't afford to close, not even for lunch. Not when we were competing with the big chains that had started creeping into Fort Worth, their parking lots always full, their prices always just a little lower than ours. But we had something they didn't. We had knowledge. Real knowledge. Robert grew up working construction with his father. He could tell a contractor exactly what they needed for a job down to the last screw. He could explain the difference between types of wood to a first-time homeowner in a way that didn't make them feel stupid. People trusted him. And I had the numbers. I'd worked as a bookkeeper for a tax preparer before Brandon was born, and I knew how to read a balance sheet, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to find the extra 3% that made the difference between staying open and closing our doors. We made it work. Barely. In 1991, we almost lost everything. A big chain opened 2 miles away and our sales dropped 40% in 3 months. The bank wanted to call our loan. Robert's credit score couldn't get us a refinance. He'd made some mistakes with credit cards in his 20s back before we met. But mine could. I sat across from a loan officer named Patricia Reeves in a bank that smelled like coffee and desperation. She looked at my application, looked at me with Brandon squirming in the chair beside me, and Emily, our daughter. Just a baby then asleep in a stroller. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, "your husband's credit history is concerning." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm here. Not him, me." She studied me for a long moment. "If I approve this, the liability is yours. Do you understand that if the business fails, they come after your assets first?" I understood. I signed anyway. We survived 1991, then 1992. By 1995, we were stable. By 2000, we opened a second location in Arlington. By 2005, Hayes Hardware was one of the few independent stores that hadn't been bought out or crushed by the chains. People knew us. They knew our name. They knew they'd get honest advice and fair prices, and someone who actually cared whether their project turned out right. We built that. Robert and I. Together. I remember one night when Brandon was about 15. We were closing up the store counting the register, and he was sitting on the counter swinging his legs the way he used to when he was little. "One day this will all be mine," he said, looking around at the aisles, the inventory, the steady hum of the place. I looked up from the cash drawer. "Ours," I said. "If you want it, but you have to want the work, not just the reward." He nodded, but I saw something in his eyes, that distant look kids get when they're thinking about the future, but don't really understand what it costs. "Sure, Mom," he said. I know. I should have paid more attention to that look. I should have noticed the difference between wanting something and being willing to build it. But back then, I still believed that love and sacrifice were the same thing. That if you gave enough, worked hard enough, showed up enough, the people you were building for would see your value. I believed family meant something. Emily was different. She knew from the time she was 12 that she wanted to be a nurse. She volunteered at the hospital, shadowed the school, nurse-studied biology and chemistry like they held the secrets of the universe. When she graduated high school, she applied to nursing programs and never once suggested she wanted to work at the store. "I want to help people differently," she told me one night while we were making dinner. Robert and Brandon were still at the Arlington location doing inventory. "You don't have to explain," I said. "I'm proud of you." "You're not disappointed." "Why would I be disappointed?" She shrugged, stirring the pot on the stove. "Brandon always talks about taking over the store, like it's expected." "I don't know. I thought maybe you'd want me there too." I turned off the burner and made her look at me. "I want you to build your own life, whatever that looks like. That's what all this is for, so you kids have choices." She hugged me. I remember that hug. How tight it was. How she smelled like the vanilla body spray she wore too much of. How young she still was. "Thanks, Mom," she said. That was 2003. She went to nursing school in San Antonio, met a good man named Michael, got married, had 3 kids. She called every week, visited when she could, built a life that was hers. Brandon was different. 2018. 5 years ago, Brandon graduated from college with a business degree and no interest in hardware. "I want to do something different," he told us. He was 22, standing in the lumber section of our original store wearing clothes that cost more than we used to spend on groceries in a month. Something bigger than the family store, no offense. I watched Robert's face fall just for a second before he covered it with a smile. "What do you want to do?" Brandon shrugged. "Consulting, strategy, helping businesses scale. The store is fine, but it's small. You know I want to think bigger." Small. He called it small. The store that had paid for his college, his car, his apartment, the spring break trips to Cabo, the computer he'd insisted he needed, the meal plan he never used because he ate out every night. That store was small. But I didn't argue. I wanted him to be happy. I wanted him to find his own path the way Emily had. "Okay," I said. "What's your plan?" He had one sort of. He rented a desk at a co-working space in downtown Dallas, one of those trendy places with exposed brick and a coffee bar, and people who said they were entrepreneurs, but mostly seemed to attend a lot of meetings. He called his business BH Consulting, which stood for Brandon Hayes, but sounded like it should be something more impressive. For a year he did something. He'd show up at family dinners talking about clients and pitch decks and growth strategies using words that sounded impressive but meant nothing when you asked for details. Robert loved it. He'd sit at the table with this look of pride listening to Brandon talk about business development and market penetration like he was Steve Jobs. "He's going places," Robert would say. "Real places, not stuck behind a counter selling nails. Not stuck, like what we'd built together was a trap, not a choice." I kept quiet, but part of me wondered what places exactly, and how was he planning to get there. That's when he met Lauren. Summer 2018, she worked in the same co-working building doing something with marketing for her family's business. Her father owned Mitchell Auto Group, 8 dealerships across North Texas, the kind of business where everyone drives a new car and talks about their lake house like it's just another room in their regular house. Lauren wore clothes that looked expensive even when they were casual. She had that way of speaking that made everything sound certain, like she'd never questioned a decision in her life, like doubt was something that happened to other people. Brandon brought her to meet us on a Sunday afternoon at the original store. We just finished inventory and the place smelled like sawdust and WD-40. I was behind the counter in jeans and an old company polo, and Robert was helping our manager David load drywall into a customer's truck out back. Lauren walked in wearing white pants and heels that clicked on our scuffed linoleum. She looked around slowly, taking in the pegboard walls, the narrow aisles, the mismatched shelving we'd added over the years as we grew. Her smile was polite, but something about it made my skin prickle. "So this is it," she said more to Brandon than to me. "The family business." "This is it," I said, coming around the counter to shake her hand. "We've been here almost 30 years now. It's so—" She paused, choosing her word carefully. "Quaint. It has character." The way she said character made it sound like a flaw, like calling an old car vintage when you really mean broken down. Brandon gave her a tour, pointing out sections like he'd spent years working there, instead of a few summers in high school before he found excuses to be anywhere else. Lauren nodded along, asking polite questions, but I caught her checking her phone when she thought we weren't looking. When they left, Robert came back inside, wiping his hands on a rag. "She seems nice." "She does." I agreed, though something about the visit sat wrong with me, like the first twinge of pain that tells you something's about to hurt worse. Within 6 months, they were engaged. The wedding, spring 2019. The wedding was at a country club I'd only ever seen from the highway. Tall white columns out front, a lawn that looked like a golf course, waiters in bow ties carrying champagne on silver trays. The kind of place where even the parking lot feels like it's judging you. Lauren's parents paid for most of it, but we contributed too, quietly. Robert wrote checks without telling me the amounts, but I saw the statements later. We paid for the flowers, $4,000 for arrangements that would die in 3 days. The photographer, $3,500 for someone who mostly took pictures of Lauren. The rehearsal dinner, $6,200 more than our monthly mortgage payment. At the wedding, Lauren's side of the church took up most of the guest list. Her father's business associates, her mother's book club friends, cousins from Houston and aunts from New Mexico. Their side had probably 200 people. Our side had maybe 40. People from the store, Robert's brother Tom and his family, a handful of old friends. We filled maybe 6 pews. During the reception, I overheard Lauren talking to one of her cousins near the dessert table. I'd gone over to get a piece of cake, not that I was hungry, but I needed something to do with my hands. "Caleb's family is sweet," she was saying, her voice light and airy. "Very hard-working, very grounded. His mom still works the counter at their little shop. Can you imagine?" She laughed. The cousin laughed with her. "I keep telling Brandon he needs to get them to retire," Lauren continued, "but I think they like the routine. It's very blue-collar, you know, but authentic." I stood there holding a plate of cake I no longer wanted. The word authentic hung in the air like it was supposed to be a compliment, but felt more like she was describing a museum exhibit. That night, back at our hotel room, I mentioned it to Robert while we were getting ready for bed. "Lauren said something that bothered me," I started. He didn't look up from untying his shoes. "She's young. She doesn't mean anything by it. She called the store little, like it was something to be embarrassed about." "It is small," Robert said, standing up to hang his suit jacket. "Compared to what her family has. That's not a bad thing, Samantha. Different worlds, that's all." Different worlds. I didn't argue. I was too tired, and it was his son's wedding day, and I didn't want to be the person who ruined it by being oversensitive. So I brushed my teeth and went to bed and told myself it didn't matter what Lauren thought about our store. But over the next year, I noticed Robert measuring our success by Lauren's family's standards instead of our own. He started talking about expanding, about franchise opportunities, about selling to a bigger chain, and cashing out while we could. Lauren's father says independent stores won't last another decade, he'd say over dinner. He says we should think about our exit strategy. We're not exiting, I'd remind him. This is our life's work. It's a business, he'd say. Businesses change. Lauren started reshaping the family story, too. At gatherings with her friends, I'd hear her talk about how Brandon was taking over the family business soon, making it sound like he was already running things when he barely showed up except to walk through and wave at the staff. She'd talk about our plans to expand, to modernize, to partner with bigger suppliers, things we'd never actually discussed. And Brandon would stand there nodding, not correcting her, just letting her spin a version of reality that had nothing to do with the truth. Robert never corrected her either. He was too dazzled by the connections, by the invitations to golf tournaments and charity dinners, by the idea that marrying into Lauren's family meant we'd moved up somehow. I watched the shift happen slowly. The way Robert started dressing differently, buying clothes from stores he used to make fun of. The way he talked about the store like it was something to move past instead of something to be proud of. The way he stopped asking my opinion and started making decisions based on what Richard Mitchell would think. And I stayed quiet. Because I'd been raised to believe that keeping the peace mattered more than speaking up. That a good wife supported her husband. That family harmony was worth swallowing your pride. I should have seen it then. The pattern forming. The respect slipping away one small moment at a time. But I told myself it was temporary. That once Brandon and Lauren settled down, once they had kids, things would balance out. I was wrong. 2020. The pandemic year. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening in March, right when the world was shutting down, and everything felt uncertain. I was at the store doing end-of-day paperwork. We'd just started curbside pickup because of COVID, and I was trying to figure out the new system when my cell rang. Brandon's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, can you and Dad come over for dinner this weekend?" he asked. There was something careful in his voice, the tone he used when he was about to ask for something. "Lauren and I want to talk to you about something." "What about?" I asked, already sensing this wasn't going to be a casual dinner. "It's good news," he said quickly. "Really good. We'll explain when you get here." That Saturday, Robert and I drove to the apartment Brandon and Lauren were renting in a complex near downtown Dallas. It was nice enough, 2 bedrooms, a balcony overlooking a pool, granite countertops that looked like marble, but Lauren had made it clear more than once that it wasn't where she planned to stay. "We're outgrowing this place," she'd say whenever we visited, one hand resting on her barely showing belly. She was 4 months pregnant with their first child. "We need something with room to grow." They were expecting a boy. They'd already picked out the name Jackson Richard Hayes. Richard after Lauren's father, of course. Dinner was takeout from an expensive Italian place, the kind where the portions are small and the prices are large, and you're supposed to be impressed. We sat at their dining table, the same one Robert and I had bought them as a wedding gift, and made small talk while we ate. Finally, Brandon pushed his plate aside and glanced at Lauren. She nodded. "So," he began, folding his hands on the table in a way that reminded me of a business presentation. "We've been looking at houses." "That's exciting," Robert said, leaning forward. "Found anything you like?" "We did," Lauren said, pulling out her phone and swiping through photos. "It's in a gated community north of Dallas. Great schools, well for later. Beautiful neighborhood. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. The master suite alone is bigger than this entire apartment." She turned her phone toward us. I looked at the photos. The house was enormous. Modern. All clean lines and big windows and professionally landscaped yards with trees that looked like they'd been placed with a ruler. "It's lovely," I said carefully, "but that's got to be expensive." "It is," Brandon admitted. He pulled out a folder he'd prepared, this rehearsed it, and slid a sheet of paper across to us. "That's what we wanted to talk to you about." He laid it out like a business proposal. Professional. Practiced. They'd found the perfect house, he said, but they couldn't qualify for the full mortgage on their own. Not yet. Brandon's consulting business was still building momentum. Lauren worked part-time for her father's company, but was planning to stay home once the baby came. "What we're thinking," Brandon said, his voice calm and reasonable, "is a partnership. You buy the house as an investment property. We pay you rent until we can take over the mortgage ourselves. Win-win for everyone." I sat back in my chair and looked at Robert. He was nodding slowly, like he'd already decided this was a good idea. "It's basically real estate investment," Lauren added, her smile bright and confident. "You'd own an asset that appreciates. We'd have the space we need for Jackson. And eventually we buy you out. Everybody benefits." How much are we talking about? I asked. Brandon slid another piece of paper across the table. A purchase agreement. Numbers highlighted in yellow. I looked at the price and felt my stomach tighten. $450,000. The house was 3 times what Robert and I had paid for our current home. The down payment alone, $90,000, would take a significant chunk of our savings. Money we'd been putting aside for retirement for emergencies for the future we'd been working toward for 40 years. Can we think about it? I asked. Of course, Lauren said quickly, but her smile tightened just a little. But the market's moving fast. The seller wants an answer by next week. We've already lost 2 other houses because we couldn't move quickly enough. On the drive home, Robert was quiet for a long time. What do you think? I finally asked. I think it's a good opportunity, he said, eyes on the road. Real estate's solid, and it's for Jackson, for Brandon's family. It's a lot of money, Robert. We have it, he said. What else are we saving it for? We're not getting any younger. Might as well help our kids while we can. I ran the numbers that night at the kitchen table. Spreadsheets and calculator and bank statements spread out in front of me. We had the money. Barely, but it would leave us with almost no cushion. If something went wrong at the store, if one of us got sick, if anything unexpected happened, we'd be in trouble. But Brandon was our son. Lauren was carrying our first grandchild. They needed help. I called Brandon the next morning. We'll do it, Mom, I said. But the deed stays in my name until the mortgage is paid off. Once you're ready to buy us out, we can transfer it. Until then, it's our property, legally. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Is that really necessary? Brandon asked. We're family. It's necessary, I said firmly. This is a business arrangement. Like you said, we need to protect ourselves. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay, he said finally. If that's what it takes. We closed on the house 6 weeks later. I signed more papers than I could count, my hand cramping from writing my name over and over. Samantha Hayes. Samantha Hayes. Samantha Hayes. My name, my signature, my house. Brandon and Lauren were there, excited, making plans about furniture and paint colors and which room would be the nursery. Robert squeezed my shoulder as we left the title company. You did a good thing, he said. I wanted to believe him. 3 months later, after baby Jackson was born, things shifted again. The move-in, Mom, Lauren's overwhelmed with the baby, Brandon said over the phone. His voice had that exhausted edge new fathers get. And the house is so big. We've got that whole guest suite on the first floor that's just sitting empty. I heard Jackson crying in the background. What if you and Dad moved in? He continued. Just temporarily. You could help with the baby and we could all be together. It would be like those multi-generational households everyone's talking about now. Really efficient. Efficient. Let me talk to your father, I said. Robert loved the idea. Loved the thought of being close to Jackson. Loved the modern house with its smart appliances and surround sound. He was ready to sell our old place and move in that same week. Think about it, he said that night, sitting on the bed we'd shared for 42 years in the house we'd made our own. We'd get to watch Jackson grow up, be there for all the first moments. And Brandon needs us. Our house was small, but it was paid off, comfortable, ours. The house where we'd raised our children. Where I'd painted the kitchen 3 times trying to find the right color, where Emily had measured herself against the doorframe every birthday until she was taller than me, where Brandon had carved his initials in the back porch when he was 8, and we'd never had the heart to sand them out. But our son needed us. Our grandson needed us. So we did it. We sold the house where we'd raised our children, packed up 30 years of memories into boxes, and moved into the guest suite of a house that was legally mine, but had never felt like home. The suite was nice. Bedroom, bathroom, small sitting area, separate entrance. Lauren kept calling it your own space, making it sound like we were getting something special instead of being tucked away in a corner of a house that was supposed to be theirs, but was on paper mine. At first it was fine, good even. I'd hold Jackson, this tiny, perfect person with Brandon's eyes and Lauren's nose, and feel like maybe this had been the right choice. I'd help with feedings and diaper changes. I'd cook meals while Lauren recovered. Robert would sit in the nursery with the baby sleeping on his chest, looking happier than I'd seen him in years. But slowly things changed. Lauren started asking me to do more, small things at first. Could you pick up groceries while you're out? I'm just so tired. Could you start a load of laundry? The baby was fussy all night. Could you watch Jackson while I take a nap? Just for an hour. I said yes. Every time I said yes, because that's what grandmothers do. That's what family does. But then the requests got bigger. Lauren needed me to clean the upstairs bathrooms because the cleaning service was too expensive now with the baby. Could I organize the playroom? Could I meal prep for the week? Could I be home by 3 to watch Jackson because she had a hair appointment? I was doing more housework than I'd done in my own home. More cooking, more cleaning, more childcare. And somewhere along the way, without anyone saying it out loud, I stopped being the grandmother who lived in the guest suite. I became the help. 6 months after moving in, summer 2021, it's funny how you can pinpoint the exact moment you became invisible. For me, it was a Tuesday afternoon in June. Hot. The kind of Texas heat that makes the air shimmer above the pavement. I was in the kitchen making lemonade from scratch, the real kind with actual lemons, because Lauren had mentioned the day before that store-bought tasted chemical. Lauren had 3 of her friends over. They were sitting on the back patio under the pergola Robert and I had paid to have installed. White wicker furniture with cream cushions. Iced coffee in glasses that caught the sunlight. All of them in their 30s talking about Pilates classes and the new organic market that had opened in the shopping center. I was putting away groceries I'd picked up that morning, things Lauren had texted me to get because she was too busy to go herself. Organic blueberries, $8 a container. Grass-fed beef, $24 a pound. Artisan bread from the bakery that only opened 3 days a week. I heard Lauren's laugh first. That practiced sound she made with her friends, bright and careless. Then I heard the snap. Fingers. She snapped her fingers. Samantha, can you bring out the pitcher of iced tea and maybe some of those cookies from the pantry, the Italian ones? Not a question. A command wrapped in pleasant words. I stood there for a moment, my hands still on the refrigerator door, feeling something crack open in my chest. The way she'd said my name, not Mom, not even Samantha, with warmth just flat. Transactional. I brought the tea. I brought the cookies, imported biscotti, $12 a box. I refilled glasses when they got low. I cleared away used napkins. I smiled when one of her friends thanked me, though the others barely looked up. As I walked back into the house, I heard Lauren's voice drift through the open door. It's so convenient, she was saying. Honestly, having her here is like having live-in staff, but family. She loves to help. Her friends murmured agreement. Someone said something about wishing her own mother lived closer. I stood in the kitchen with my hands braced against the counter, staring at nothing. Live-in staff, but family. She loves to help. The words sat in my stomach like stones. That night I couldn't sleep. Robert was snoring beside me, exhausted from a long day at the Arlington location. I lay in the dark of our bedroom in a house I owned but didn't live in, not really, and thought about all the small moments that had led here. The way Lauren had started leaving lists for me on the kitchen counter. Not suggestions. Instructions. Pick up dry cleaning by 3 p.m. Polish the silver, use the good stuff. Not grocery store brand. Guest bathroom needs deep clean before Friday meal prep for the week. See Pinterest board I sent you. The way Brandon had stopped saying, could you, and started saying, can you just grab my dry cleaning? I've got calls all afternoon. Can you just watch Jackson? We need a date night. Can you just handle dinner? Lauren's exhausted. The way Robert had started treating their requests like they were reasonable, inevitable, expected. She's helping family, he'd say when I mentioned feeling overwhelmed. That's what grandparents do. But somewhere in the past 6 months, helping had become serving. I got up and walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was dark except for the streetlights casting yellow pools on the perfect sidewalks. Every house looked the same, every lawn measured and manicured, every life packaged and presented. I thought about our old house, the one with the squeaky third step and the bedroom that got too hot in summer, the one where I'd had my own kitchen, my own schedule, my own life. We'd sold it for $180,000, given half to Brandon and Lauren for expenses. Put the rest in savings that we were now slowly draining to cover the lifestyle they couldn't afford on their own. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months. Anger, not the hot explosive kind, the cold clear kind that shows you exactly what's real. November 2024, 1 month before Christmas. The envelope was manila. Standard size, folded in half and stuffed in the back corner of Robert's dresser drawer under his socks. I wasn't snooping. I need you to understand that. I was putting away laundry on a Saturday morning while Robert was playing golf with Richard Mitchell, something he'd started doing every weekend, coming home talking about business strategies and market opportunities like he'd discovered a new religion. I pushed the drawer shut, but it caught on something. When I opened it to fix whatever was jamming it, I saw the corner of the envelope sticking out. I almost left it, almost closed the drawer and walked away, but something about the way it was hidden made me pause. I pulled it out. Legal documents. The kind I'd been reading for 30 years, partnership agreements, transfer of authority, management restructuring. My hands started shaking before I finished the first page. Brandon was being given managing authority over Hayes Hardware, full authority, decision-making power over operations, staffing vendor contracts, expansion plans, access to accounts, control over hiring and firing, effective immediately. Robert had signed it 2 weeks ago. November 4th, 2024. My name wasn't on it. Anywhere. I sat on the edge of the bed with those papers in my lap and felt the room tilt. The store. The business Robert and I had built together. The one I'd saved in 1991 with my credit when his wouldn't qualify. The one I'd managed the books for negotiated suppliers fought for during every slow season and economic downturn. The one where I'd worked 6 days a week for 40 years. And Robert had just handed it to Brandon. Without discussing it with me, without even telling me. I read through every page, slowly, carefully. There were notes in the margins in Robert's handwriting, things like Pierre R. Mitchell suggestion and discuss expansion plans with B. Richard Mitchell, Lauren's father. This had been planned, discussed, decided, behind my back. I sat there for a long time, those papers in my hands, and thought about every loan I'd signed. Every late night doing inventory. Every time I'd negotiated a better rate with a supplier because I'd done my homework and knew the market. Every decision I'd made that had kept us afloat. Invisible. I'd become invisible in my own business, in my own life. I was still sitting there when I heard Robert's car in the driveway 3 hours later. His whistling carried through the house. Happy, unconcerned. He stopped when he saw me in the bedroom doorway, the envelope in my hand. "What's that?" he asked, though his face told me he already knew. "You tell me," I said, holding it out. He took it, glanced at the papers, set it on the dresser like it was nothing. "It's just paperwork, Samantha. Making things official." "Official?" I repeated slowly. "You gave Brandon managing authority over our business without telling me." "I meant to tell you," he said, loosening his tie. "I just hadn't found the right time." "The right time?" The laugh that came out of me sounded wrong even to my own ears. When would that have been, Robert? After he'd already made decisions I didn't agree with, after he'd changed things I'd built. Or were you just never going to tell me at all? "Don't be dramatic," he said. "It's time for Brandon to step up, to take charge. We're not getting any younger, and he needs to learn how to run things." "He doesn't know how to run things," I said. My voice was calm, too calm. "He shows up twice a week for photo opportunities while David and Sarah do the actual work." "He'll learn by doing," Robert said. "That's how we learned." "We learned by working," I said. "By being there every single day, by making sacrifices and hard decisions. Brandon's not doing any of that." Robert sighed like I was being difficult, like I was the problem. "You've always been too hard on him," he said. "He's doing his best, and frankly the store needs fresh energy. New ideas. Brandon can bring that." I felt something go very still inside me. "What about my ideas?" I asked quietly. "What about my energy? I'm still here, Robert. I still work there every day. I still handle the accounts and the suppliers and all the things that actually matter. But suddenly I don't get a say in who runs the place." "You're making this about you when it's about him," Robert said. "It's about giving our son an opportunity." "It's about you erasing me," I said. He looked genuinely confused. "Nobody's erasing you, Samantha. You're still part of the business. You'll always be part of it." "But not equal," I said. "Not respected, not consulted. Just there, just useful." He didn't answer that. Didn't seem to understand why I was upset. And in that moment, standing in the bedroom of a house I'd bought for my son, while my husband defended giving away the business I'd helped build, I understood something terrible. Robert didn't see me as a partner anymore. He saw me as a supporting character in someone else's story, and I had let it happen, one yes at a time, one favor, one compromise, One moment of staying quiet when I should have spoken up. I walked out of the room and closed the door behind me. Robert didn't follow. 3 weeks before Christmas, I was folding sheets in the upstairs hallway on a Wednesday afternoon. The laundry room was tucked at the end of the hall near the master bedroom, Lauren's design choice because she liked keeping utility spaces out of sight. I'd learned to do laundry during the day when the house was quiet, when I could work without being interrupted every 5 minutes with another task, another request, another expectation. Brandon was at his office, the co-working space he still rented, even though his consulting business had produced exactly 0 clients in the past 6 months that I knew of. Jackson was at a play date with one of Lauren's friend's children. Robert was at the store. I was alone in the house. Or so I thought. Then I heard Lauren's voice coming from the bedroom. The door was open just a crack. Her voice had that edge to it, the one she used when she was being honest instead of polite. She was on the phone. I wasn't trying to listen. But I stopped folding, and I heard. "No, I know," she was saying, "but it's getting awkward. She's here all the time. When people come over, they don't know if she's family or staff. It's confusing." I stood very still, a fitted sheet half folded in my hands. "I mean, she's useful," Lauren continued. "Don't get me wrong. The free childcare is amazing, and she does all the housework without being asked. But useful isn't the same as, lovable. Useful, not lovable. The words hit like a physical thing. "We've been looking at those luxury retirement communities," Lauren said. Her voice dropped lower, more conspiratorial. "The nice ones with the activities and the meal plans. We'll sell it as a gift. Like, you've worked so hard you deserve to relax. All of that." She'll feel guilty saying no. There was a pause while the person on the other end, her sister, I realized from something Lauren said next, responded. "Well, that's the thing," Lauren said. "Once she's settled there, we can simplify everything. The business structure is a mess. Right now, Brandon technically doesn't have full control because Samantha's name is still on half the paperwork. And this house, legally, it's still in her name. Can you believe that she's living in our house, but we don't even own it?" My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Right," Lauren said. "So we get her to sign some documents, present it as estate planning or whatever, simplifying things for tax purposes. She doesn't need to understand all the details. Robert can handle her." Robert can handle her. "And then we're clear," Lauren continued, her voice brightening. "House is ours. Business is ours. She's taken care of in a nice place. We're not the bad guys. Everyone's happy." Another pause. "Brandon's nervous about it," Lauren admitted. "He thinks she won't go for it. But honestly, what choice does she have? It's not like she can afford to move out on her own. Not with what retirement costs these days. This way she gets a nice facility and we get our house back. Win for everyone." The person on the other end must have asked about me staying in the guest suite because Lauren laughed, a sound without humor. "God, no. I need that space for when my parents visit. And frankly, the optics are terrible. People think we can't afford our own place or that we need a live-in nanny. It makes us look, I don't know, less than. Less than. Look, I'm not heartless," Lauren said, and I almost laughed at that. "She's been helpful, but there's a difference between helping when you visit and just being here all the time. It's our house, our life, our family." She had her turn. There was more conversation. Something about timing and paperwork and making sure Robert was on board. But I'd stopped listening. I carefully, silently set the sheet down on the folding table, walked back down the hallway on legs that felt numb, into the guest suite, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed. They were going to take it all. The house I'd bought, the business I'd built, my autonomy, my choice, my place in my own family. They were going to wrap it up like a gift, call it generosity, and make me sign away everything I'd worked for. And then they'd put me somewhere out of sight where I wouldn't be confusing to their guests or inconvenient to their image. But there was something else. Something Lauren had said that made everything worse. Simplifying things for tax purposes. That wasn't about estate planning. That was about something else, something urgent. I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in months. I searched for Richard Mitchell's name in Mitchell Auto Group. The first result was a news article from 2 weeks ago. Mitchell Auto Group faces financial difficulties amid industry downturn. I read it twice. Then I read 3 more articles. Richard Mitchell's dealerships were struggling. Badly. Inventory problems. Sales down 40%. loans coming due. There were rumors of bankruptcy, of selling off properties, of liquidation. Lauren's family was in trouble, and they needed money. My house, my equity, my business. Suddenly it all made sense. The urgency, the timing, the retirement community plan that had to happen now, not later. They didn't just want to get rid of me. They needed my assets to save her father's business. I stood up and opened the closet. On the top shelf pushed to the back behind the winter coats I never wore in Texas was an old accordion file, brown with age, rubber band around it that had lost its stretch years ago. I pulled it down and set it on the bed. Inside were decades of documents, original partnership agreements for the store, loan papers with my signature, property deeds, insurance policies, every important piece of paper that marked the building of our life. I spread them out on the bedspread. The deed to this house, my name, my signature, my property, the business registration for Hayes Hardware. Both our names, but mine first, because I'd filed the paperwork. The mortgage documents, my credit score that had gotten us approved when Robert's alone wouldn't have been enough. Retirement accounts, investment statements, the paper trail of everything we'd saved and built and earned. I read through each document slowly, carefully, seeing them with new eyes. What could they take? Only what I let them take. What could I take back? Everything that was already mine. I thought about Lauren's voice on that phone call, about the way she'd said useful but not lovable, like those were the only two options, like being useful meant you'd forfeited the right to be valued as a person. I thought about Brandon being nervous, but going along with it anyway, too weak to stop his wife from plotting to exile his own mother, too comfortable with the house I'd bought and the business I'd helped build to risk losing any of it by doing the right thing. I thought about Robert. Robert can handle her. My husband of 43 years, who would help them convince me to sign away my own life because it was easier than standing up for his wife. I pulled out my phone and took photos of every document, every deed, every account statement, every piece of proof that showed exactly what I owned and what I'd built. Then I put the documents back in the accordion file, put the file back in the closet, sat down at the small desk in the corner of the suite. I opened my laptop and searched for lawyers who specialized in property law and family businesses. I wasn't angry, not in the loud, explosive way, not in the way that makes you scream or throw things or make dramatic declarations. I was something colder than anger, something more dangerous. I was clear. 2 weeks before Christmas, Monday morning, Margaret Foster's office was in an older building in downtown Fort Worth. Not the shiny glass towers where Lauren's family probably did their business, but a solid brick structure with character and history. The kind of place that had seen decades of people fighting for what was theirs. I'd called her Friday afternoon, told her I needed to review some legal documents regarding property and business ownership. She didn't ask questions, just told me to come in Monday at 9. Her office smelled like coffee and old books. She met me at the door, a woman in her mid-50s with gray hair she didn't bother to dye and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She wore a pantsuit that was professional but comfortable, and when she shook my hand, her grip was firm. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, "come in, coffee. Please." She poured us both a cup from a carafe on her desk, then gestured to a chair. The leather was worn, but good quality. Everything in her office had that same feeling, well-used, well-maintained, built to last. "So," she said, settling into her own chair across from me. "Tell me what's going on." I told her everything. The house, the business documents Robert had signed without telling me, the conversation I'd overheard, the plan to move me into a retirement community and take control of everything I'd built, the bankruptcy rumors about Lauren's father, the timing that was suddenly urgent. Margaret listened without interrupting, made notes on a legal pad. Her expression got more serious with every sentence. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and looked at me for a long moment. "Do you want my legal opinion or my personal one?" she asked. "Both," I said. "Personally, I think your family's treating you terribly and you'd be justified in whatever you decide to do." She leaned forward, picking up a pen. "Legally, you have more power than they realize. A lot more." She pulled out a folder and started going through documents I'd emailed her over the weekend. "The store," she said, spreading out the partnership agreement. "You and Robert are equal partners on paper, but you're the one who filed the original business registration. You're the one whose credit got you through the rough years. You've been signing the checks and managing the accounts for 3 decades. If this came to a legal battle, a judge would see that you've been the primary operator." She pulled out another document. "The house. This one's simple. Your name is on the deed alone. Brandon and Lauren have no legal claim to it whatsoever. They're essentially tenants, whether they realize it or not." "Robert helped pay for it," I said. "From a joint account, sure, but the title is in your name. That's what matters legally. You could sell that house tomorrow and they couldn't stop you." She opened another file. "Retirement accounts. Most of these are joint, which means both of you have access. But there are beneficiary designations and survivorship clauses. You need to make sure everything's structured the way you want it." I thought about Robert's doctor appointments over the past year, the blood pressure medications, the cholesterol pills, the way he got winded walking upstairs. "What can I do?" I asked. Margaret picked up her pen. "Lots of things. Question is, what do you want to do?" I took a breath. "I want control of what's mine," I said. "I want the house and the business protected so they can't be taken from me or signed away while I'm being pressured or manipulated. I want to make my own decisions about where I live and what happens to everything I've built." "Okay," Margaret said. "Let's do this right." We spent the next 3 hours going through everything. She drafted a trust in my name with me as the sole trustee. The house would go into the trust. My share of the business would go into the trust. My individual accounts would be transferred to the trust. Everything protected. Everything under my control alone. "Nobody can force you to sign anything," Margaret explained. "Nobody can make decisions about your assets without your explicit approval. If Robert tries to give Brandon more authority, you can block it. If they try to sell something, you can block it. You're in the driver's seat." "What about the store?" I asked. "I don't want Brandon to have it. He hasn't earned it." Margaret nodded. "Have you thought about selling to your employees, David and Sarah you mentioned, the people who've actually been running it with you?" I had thought about it. Had thought about it more over the past few days than I wanted to admit. "They couldn't afford market value," I said. "You could structure it as an owner-financed sale. They pay you over time below market rate. You'd still get income from it. They'd get a business they've helped build, and Brandon gets nothing." Something in my chest loosened at that idea. "I like that," I said. "I like that a lot." We drafted intent to sell documents, papers that outlined the offer to David, Sarah, and 2 other longtime employees. Fair terms, reasonable payments, a business that would stay in the hands of people who actually cared about it. "The house," Margaret said. "What do you want to do there?" "Sell it," I said without hesitation. "List it right after New Year's. I'll find somewhere smaller, somewhere that's actually mine." "They're going to fight you on this," Margaret warned. "Let them," I said. "It's my house." We drew up listing paperwork, contacted a realtor Margaret knew, set a timeline for getting it on the market by the 2nd week of January. "Bank accounts," Margaret said. "I'd recommend transferring your personal funds to a different bank, somewhere Robert doesn't have automatic access, just in case." I nodded. "Can we do that today?" "We can start the process." By the time I left Margaret's office, the sun was starting to set. The sky was orange and pink, the kind of winter sunset that looks like it's apologizing for the cold. My phone had been buzzing in my purse all afternoon. I pulled it out and saw text messages from Lauren. "Can you pick up the silver polish on your way home? Need the good stuff, not the cheap kind. Also grab more coffee. We're almost out. What time will you be back? Need help getting dinner started." I stared at those messages, at the casual assumption that I had nothing better to do than run her errands and cook her meals. A week ago, I would have stopped at the store, would have rushed home to make sure dinner was ready on time. Now I almost laughed. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. The big dinner was the day after. Lauren had been planning it for weeks, sending me lists and instructions, treating me like catering staff. She had no idea that the woman she'd been ordering around had just spent the afternoon taking back every bit of power they'd thought they could strip away. I put my phone back in my purse without responding. Then I drove to a diner near the highway and ordered myself a meal. Sat at a booth by the window and ate slowly, watching the traffic pass by. Feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The revenge was in motion, and they had no idea it was coming. December 24th, 2024, I woke up knowing this was the last Christmas I would spend invisible. The guest suite was cold. I'd turned down the thermostat the night before a small rebellion Lauren would complain about later. I got dressed slowly, jeans and a simple sweater, nothing fancy. I wasn't performing anymore. In the kitchen, Lauren was already moving at high speed, phone pressed between her shoulder and ear checking lists. "No, the centerpieces need to be here by 2, she was saying. 2, not 3. We have family photos at 3:30. She saw me and waved a hand toward the counter without pausing her conversation. A list, of course, written in her perfect handwriting on cream-colored stationery. Samantha, Christmas Eve tasks, pick up dry cleaning, Robert's suit, Brandon's shirt, my red dress, polish all silverware, use the expensive polish bottom cabinet. Deep clean guest bathroom parents arriving at 6. Prep vegetable trays for tomorrow. Check that dining room is camera ready. Like we were staging a photo shoot, not having a family dinner. I picked up the list and read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. "I'll handle it," I said. Lauren looked up, surprised I'd spoken. "Oh, good, thanks." Then back to her phone. I did everything on that list. Every single thing. Perfectly, because this was the last time. That afternoon I saw Lauren preparing the place cards in the dining room. Gold calligraphy on cream cardstock. She arranged them carefully around the table, reading each name aloud to herself like a rehearsal. "Richard, Patricia, Brandon, me, Jackson's high chair here. Tom, Lisa, Ashley, Rebecca, Michael." She pulled one more item from a box. Not a place card. A plastic badge on a lanyard. She smiled as she set it aside on the buffet. My phone buzzed. Emily texting from San Antonio. "Miss you, Mom. Wish we could be there. Michael's mom demanded we do Christmas with her family this year. I'm sorry." I typed back. "Don't be sorry, sweetheart. Enjoy your day. I love you. Love you too. Call me tomorrow, I will." I wouldn't be here tomorrow. But I didn't tell her that yet. That evening, Robert came back from last-minute shopping gifts for Lauren's parents that we'd paid for, but would have Brandon and Lauren's names on them. "Big day tomorrow," he said, loosening his tie. "Lauren's worked so hard on this." "Yes," I said. "She has." He looked at me strangely. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You seem quiet." "Just tired," I said. He accepted that. He always accepted the easy answer. That night, lying in bed, Robert reached for my hand in the dark. A habit from 43 years of marriage. "Tomorrow will be nice," he said. "All of us together." I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't squeeze back either. "We'll see," I said. In the darkness, I touched my wedding ring with my thumb, twisted it slowly. It slid off easier than it should have. I'd lost weight in the past 6 months. Stress will do that. I held the ring in my palm, feeling its weight. Tomorrow I would put it down. Tomorrow I would walk away. Tomorrow they would learn what it cost to make someone invisible. Christmas Day 2024, 1:00 p.m. The house was perfect. Obscenely perfect. White and gold everywhere. The tree stood 7 feet tall, decorated by professionals who'd spent 3 hours making sure every ornament hung at the exact right angle. The dining room gleamed crystal china silver, all of it reflecting the winter sunlight that poured through the windows. 20 people. Lauren's family filled the space with their loud voices and expensive clothes, and the casual confidence of people who'd never worried about money. I stood in the kitchen arranging glasses on a tray, watching through the doorway as Lauren positioned everyone for photos by the tree. "Immediate family first," she called out, her voice bright with performance. Richard and Patricia Mitchell, Brandon holding Jackson, Lauren beside them, one hand on Brandon's arm. Robert standing next to Richard, laughing at something he'd said. They took a dozen photos, different poses, different arrangements. Not once did anyone suggest including me. I wasn't hurt. Not anymore. I was taking notes, watching who participated in my erasure, memorizing it. At 1:15, Lauren announced it was time to eat. Everyone moved toward the dining room. I watched them find their seats, reading the place cards, commenting on the beautiful table setting. I counted again. 10 place settings. 9 chairs. Lauren caught my eye across the room, smiled that bright, practiced smile. Then she walked toward me, the plastic badge in her hand. Time slowed down. She reached up and clipped it to my sweater. Her fingers lingered on my shoulder, making sure everyone could see. "Just so the caterers don't get confused," she announced, her voice carrying across the vaulted ceiling. "We don't want anyone mixing up the family with the help. The room erupted. Laughter, loud and sharp. Lauren's parents threw their heads back. Her sister covered her mouth, giggling. Even some of the children laughed, not understanding but following the adults' cues. I looked down at the badge. Housekeeper. Block letters. Cheap plastic. The kind of thing you'd wear at a hotel or a hospital or any place where you were staff, not family. I picked up the tray of glasses I'd filled. Crystal stemware, each one perfect. I walked toward the table slowly, deliberately. Brandon was reaching for the carving knife, ready to play man of the house in a house I owned. "Mom, don't make that face," he said without looking at me. "Food's for family. You know that. Food's for family." There it was, the line I'd been waiting for. I set the tray down on the buffet, carefully, quietly. The room was still humming with conversation. Someone was pouring wine. Richard was telling a story about a golf tournament. Lauren was adjusting the centerpiece. I reached for my left hand. The wedding ring slid off easily. I'd loosened it that morning knowing this moment was coming. I held it for just a second. 43 years of marriage. 43 years of building something I thought mattered. Then I stepped forward into the gap where my chair should have been. I placed the ring on the white linen tablecloth directly in front of Brandon's plate. The soft clink of metal on china cut through every conversation like a knife. Forks froze mid-air. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. Someone's laugh died in their throat. The room went silent. Brandon stared down at the ring, then up at me. "Mom," he said slowly. "What are you doing?" I looked at him, at my son, at the boy I'd carried on my hip while restocking shelves, at the man who'd just told me in front of 20 people that food was for family and I wasn't part of it. Then I looked at Robert. His eyes were wide now, confused, like he couldn't quite process what was happening. I looked at Lauren. Her smile had frozen into something brittle. I took a slow breath and said 4 words. Calm, clear, final. "You just lost everything." The silence deepened. Lauren recovered first. That nervous laugh. "Samantha, don't be dramatic. It's a joke. You're part of the family, obviously." "Am I?" I asked quietly. No one answered. I reached up and unclipped the badge, set it beside the ring on the perfect white linen between the sterling silver and the crystal goblets. "I won't be staying for dinner," I said. "Merry Christmas." Then I turned and walked out, past the color-coordinated tree, past the staircase wrapped in fresh garland, past the cousins already pulling out their phones and the adults frozen with shock on their faces. No one tried to stop me, not my son, not my husband. Not one person in that room stood up and said my name. The front door was heavy with a fancy brushed nickel handle. It clicked shut behind me with a sound that felt like the end of something. The air outside was cold and sharp. All around me, the gated community glowed with Christmas lights on every roofline. Perfect houses, perfect lawns, perfect lives on display. I walked to my car, my beat-up Buick sitting between a Mercedes and a Lexus like it didn't belong. I unlocked it, slid behind the wheel, sat there with the keys in my hand. My phone started buzzing. Brandon's name lit up the screen. I watched it until it went to voicemail. Then I started the engine, backed out of the driveway, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see them through the big front windows. Still sitting there. Tiny shapes around that long table. Christmas dinner going on without me. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Free. December 27th. The original store. I drove to Hayes Hardware at dawn. The original location on Lancaster Avenue. The building that had started everything. The smell hit me when I unlocked the door. Sawdust and paint and WD-40. The smell of work, of purpose, of something built with actual hands. I made coffee in the small break room and sat at the desk in the corner office where I'd done bookkeeping for 40 years. I was still sitting there when I heard the bell jingle an hour later. Heavy footsteps, the pace of someone angry. Robert appeared in the doorway, his face flushed, still wearing his dress shirt from Christmas dinner wrinkled now. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded, walking out like that, embarrassing us in front of everyone. I looked at him calmly. "Good morning, Robert." "Don't good morning me," he said. "Lauren called me 15 times last night. Her parents think you've lost your mind. Brandon doesn't know what to say to people. You made us look like fools." "I made you look like fools," I repeated slowly. That's what you're upset about. You walked out of Christmas dinner because of a joke, he said. A stupid badge. You completely overreacted. I opened the folder on the desk in front of me, the one I'd prepared with Margaret's help. Come sit down, Robert, I said. I don't want to sit down. I want you to come home and apologize so we can fix this. Sit down, I said again. Something in my voice made him stop. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat still, radiating anger but starting to look uncertain. I slid the first document across the desk. That's the trust paperwork, I said. As of 3 days ago, the house is in my name alone, protected by a trust that only I control. You can't sign it away. You can't give Brandon authority over it. It's mine. Robert picked up the paper, his eyes scanning it, confusion replacing some of the anger. What is this? I slid him the next document. Intent to sell Hayes Hardware my 50% to David Sarah and the core staff who've actually been running it. Owner financed. Fair terms. They'll take over officially by March. You're selling the store. His voice went up. Without asking me, I'm selling my half of the store, I said. You can do what you want with yours. Give it to Brandon if you think he deserves it. But my share goes to people who've earned it. I slid him the third set of papers. Listing agreement for the house. It goes on the market January 10th. We'll split the profit after the mortgage is paid. Robert stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You can't do this, he said. I already did. Samantha, this is insane. You're throwing away everything we built because Lauren made a stupid joke. It's not about the badge, I said quietly. It's about the year before the badge. The year before that. It's about you giving Brandon managing authority over this business without telling me. It's about letting Lauren treat me like staff for 3 years while you played golf with her father. It's about you choosing their comfort over my dignity every single time it mattered. His face was red now. I was trying to keep the family together. By erasing me from it. He opened his mouth, closed it. We can fix this, he said finally, but his voice was weak. We can talk to them, set boundaries, make it better. I'm done trying to fix what shouldn't have been broken in the first place, I said. I pulled out one more paper, a rental listing for a small house near Corpus Christi, 2 bedrooms walking distance to the water. I'm moving here, I said. February 1st. You can come with me if you want. We can start over. Simple life. No Brandon calling you for favors. No Lauren asking me to polish silver. Just us, like it used to be. Robert looked at the listing, then at me. You're serious, he said. Completely serious. Yes. But Brandon, he started. The baby. Lauren's expecting us to help. Brandon is a grown man, I said. Lauren has parents with money and connections. They'll be fine. They need us, Robert said. They need free labor and money they didn't earn, I said. That's not the same thing. He sat there holding all those papers, his hands shaking slightly. I won't live where I'm treated as staff, I said. I won't stay in a house where there's no chair for me. I won't keep building things for people who don't value the builder. You're free to choose them or me, but I'm done choosing people who won't choose me back. Robert's face crumpled. Not with anger anymore, with panic. I never meant for it to get like this, he said. I thought I was doing the right thing, supporting our son, being a good father. You were too busy impressing Richard Mitchell and defending Brandon to notice your wife becoming invisible, I said. He put his head in his hands. What do you want me to do? He asked. I want you to think, I said. Really think about what kind of life you want and who you want to be in it. Then make your choice. I stood up, gathered my things. I'm not going back to that house, I said. I'm staying at a motel until the rental is ready. If you want to talk, you know where to find me. But I'm not waiting around while you decide if I'm worth standing up for. I left him there sitting at that desk with papers spread in front of him that proved the life he'd assumed would never change was already over. February 2025. The house sold in 4 days, 3 offers all above asking. I accepted the highest one, $695,000. After the mortgage was paid off, there was $538,000 left. I gave Robert his half, $269,000. He took it without argument. Brandon and Lauren had 60 days to move out. The phone calls came fast and furious. Brandon, how could you do this to your own son? Me, I'm not doing anything to you. I'm taking back what's mine. Lauren screaming, "We'll sue you." Margaret Foster, my lawyer, on speakerphone, "For what, she owns everything legally. You have no case." Lauren hung up. The business transfer happened February 1st. David and Sarah and 2 other longtime employees took ownership. They hung a new sign, Hayes Hardware, under new management. Brandon showed up that day, tried to argue. David quiet steady. David said, "You need to leave. This is our store now." Robert decided to stay in Fort Worth, rented an apartment near the Arlington location, still trying to salvage his relationship with Brandon, still not understanding that some things break permanently when you ignore them long enough. He called sometimes, asked how I was doing, suggested we talk about reconciling. I was always polite, but I never said yes. I moved to Corpus Christi on February 3rd. Small bungalow, peeling paint on the front porch, a backyard with a fence that leaned slightly to one side. The appliances made noise. The floors creaked. The windows stuck. I loved every imperfect inch of it. Christmas Day 2025. My kitchen smelled like coffee and cinnamon rolls. Not the expensive kind from a bakery. The kind I made myself flour on my hands, dough rising slowly on the counter. The dining table was set for 8. Mismatched chairs from thrift stores. Plates in different patterns. Cloth napkins from the dollar store mixed with ones I'd embroidered myself. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door arrived first, carrying a casserole dish. She was 73, had children who rarely called, and the sharpest sense of humor I'd ever encountered. "Something actually smells good," she said. "Not like last week when I tried that internet recipe." Clara came next, a retired teacher who made pies that could make you forget your troubles. Pecan and apple, one of each. Then Emily, my daughter. She pulled up in her minivan with Michael and the 3 kids, and the beautiful chaos that came with them spilled into my small house. "Grandma, is this your new house?" my youngest granddaughter asked, eyes wide. "It is," I said, crouching down. "What do you think?" She turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. The mismatched chairs. The table that wobbled slightly. The tree in the corner with dollar store ornaments mixed with a few I'd brought from my old life. "It looks happy," she said. Those 3 words made my throat tight. We ate at that wobbly table, talking over each other, laughing too loud, passing dishes and spilling things and not caring. Nobody was performing. Nobody was staging photos. Nobody was worried about impressions. It was messy and warm and real. After dinner, while everyone argued over a board game in the living room, Emily joined me in the kitchen. "Brandon called yesterday," she said carefully, drying a dish. "I kept washing, waiting. He wanted to know if you were okay," she continued. Didn't ask directly, but I could tell he was fishing for information. "Is he okay?" I asked. She shrugged. "Lauren left him. Took Jackson to Arizona to her sister's. Her dad's bankruptcy finalized last month. Brandon's renting a room somewhere, working as an assistant manager at a hardware store. Not ours, a chain." She paused. "He misses you, Mom." A year ago, I would have grabbed my keys that second. Would have driven hours to fix things. Now I dried my hands carefully. "I hope he's learning," I said quietly. "I don't wish him harm. I never did. But I can't go back to being invisible just because he's uncomfortable being visible to his own mistakes." "Would you ever talk to him?" Emily asked. I looked at my daughter. "Maybe, if he can say the words that matter. If he can look me in the eye and say, 'I'm sorry,' and 'I see you,' really see me. And if he does, then we'll see," I said. "But I'm not waiting for it. I'm not putting my life on hold, hoping he figures it out." Emily squeezed my hand. "You look good, Mom. Really good. Lighter somehow." "I am lighter," I said. "Turns out when you stop carrying people who won't walk beside you, you can actually breathe." That evening, after everyone left, I walked to the small shelf by the front door. Framed between a photo of my grandchildren and a picture of the original Hayes Hardware storefront was the badge from that last Christmas. Housekeeper. I'd gone back for it months after moving out. Found it in a kitchen drawer with old takeout menus and broken pens. I'd almost thrown it away, but then I realized it wasn't a reminder of shame. It was a reminder of the day I stopped accepting less than I deserved. I touched the frame lightly. They tried to give me a label instead of a seat, tried to make me small enough to fit their idea of convenient. They'd forgotten I was the one who built the floor they were standing on. If you're listening to this story and you see yourself somewhere in it, if you've been the one doing invisible work, accepting jokes at your expense, standing while everyone else sits. Hear me clearly. You are not the help unless you choose to be. When your family gives you a badge instead of a chair, you're allowed to walk away. Take back what's yours. Your time, your money, your dignity, your right to choose who gets a seat at your table. The sound of you standing up for yourself is louder than any room that tried to keep you invisible. I belong to myself now, and that's the best inheritance I could have given.